Hello, NAWA friends. Today, we are honored to have Denise Cormier Mahoney, our own president of NAWA, Florida. The date is March the 20th, 2025. Denise is a mid-career painter and printmaker whose illustrative and surface-designed compositions are infused with memories, stories, and concepts told from personal experiences or dreams and heavily influenced by nature. She received her Bachelor of Fine Arts in printmaking and painting from the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and her Master of Art Education from Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. Denise worked and exhibited in the Seattle area for 20 years and has permanent public installations at the Washington Avenue's Outdoor Art Gallery in Bremerton and in the permanent collection of McMennamins Elks Temple Hotel in Tacoma, Washington. She now lives and works in St Petersburg, Florida, where she's a resident artist at the ArtsXchange in the Warehouse Arts District. She has a studio in Memramcook, New Brunswick, her hometown, where she spends her summers creating art. As a current president of NAWA, she works to expand the membership's participation in professional exhibits and in artist workshops such as today's, to share the artist's many talents. Her collaborative relationships with art organizations include NAWA in New York City, NAWA, Florida, the ArtsXchange in St Petersburg, Florida, ArtsLink, New Brunswick, l'Association des Artistes Acadiens Professionnels du Nouveau-Brunswick at Halifax, Canadian Artist Representation. And with us this morning, Denise, looking forward to this beautiful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought it would be fun to share my space and also my inspirations, how I find inspirations to start my paintings, to whatever. And the reason I want to do that is because I want other people to feel free to share other things besides techniques or artists in residences, that kind of thing. I want you to know that we can share our life with each other, and it is going to grow who we are as creatives. And so Annabelle was saying how 20 years of living in Seattle, and now here I am in the East Coast of the United States in Florida. And I have to say that even though I never really loved the idea of being on the West Coast in Washington State, I learned a lot there. And when we were thinking about moving in 2020, I started doing research on art galleries and studio spaces and different art worlds so I could fit in when I arrived here. And I found a place called the Warehouse Art District here in St. Petersburg, and I put myself on the waiting list. Well, 4 years into, or I should say 2 years into moving, I still was on the waiting list. And it took me almost 3 years to actually get a studio here. And so at the beginning, this is an old warehouse that has been converted into subsidized studio spaces. And there's probably about 30 of them in the space that I'm in. There's 3 different art gallery spaces as well. And when I finally got in, I had this little tiny baby closet studio upstairs. And then when this larger one became available, and I'll kind of show you in a second, I didn't know if I wanted to have something this big. And my husband reminded me, listen, just get it. When you get it, you won't regret not getting it. In other words, if it is too big, then you'll decide what to do. And I did, and I found a beautiful artist named Kate Went, who is now my studio mate. So now that I'm here, I'm loving the synergy. So we've started a open studio hours. So I'm kind of hoping nobody knocks on my door while I'm here. I've closed my doors for now. But we have a thing now where we open all of our studio doors. The public are invited to come in. If you are working and don't want them to being your space, we have these little ropes that we tie across our doors, and that helps with the privacy. But let me kind of share first a little bit about my space, and then what I'd like to do is talk to you about inspirations. And at the end of my talk, I'm really hoping that those of you present would share the same, share what your inspirations are on your artwork. So with that said, let me go ahead and share my space. So this side of the studio is my artwork, and I try every art walk to take down the art and rearrange it. So right now I have a certain amount of series. I typically work in series that I have up, and then leaning against the floor are some paintings that don't necessarily fall into that series. So you can see over here, I have a false wall here and all my storage in the back. My husband built me that beautiful false wall. I do sell cards. We have a second Saturday art walk every month. And during that art walk, we have anywhere from 500 to 800 people walking through the door. So this is my main wall, and I'll talk about these two pieces that are in process right now, but I'll wait for that. And then this side of the studio is my studio mate, Kate. Her name is Kate Wench. She's a tango dancer, and she paints as she dances, very fluidly, very much focused on movement. So right now you can see tables set up. This is what the space looks like when we're actually working on art pieces. As soon as it's art walk time, all the tables, all the art supplies, everything goes away. And now we can receive larger amounts of viewers and people interested in artwork. So I'm going to now switch to, actually, no, I'm not yet. All right. So I don't know when it was. I think it was, so I've been a member of NAWA, Florida, maybe about 5 years, maybe Roberta, something like that. And I remember through an artist workshop like this, somebody, and I wish I could remember, I'll probably go on the artist page and go digging, but it was an artist that had shared that she writes poetry on her canvas first. She writes letters and words and all this stuff. And then she creates her work by creating shapes around all the letters and numbers that she laid down on the canvas. Well, I knew that I wasn't an abstract artist.
You're breaking up. Can you give me a move to another section and see if that can stop it? You're frozen.
I hear her well. Maybe it's
Okay.
your computer, Roberta.
It could be my internet. You're right. Okay.
I was
apologize.
hearing her. Everything was perfect.
I
Denise,
apologize. Okay.
Is it
Hopefully
good?
my recording's, yeah, hopefully the recording's fine. It's fine
Okay.
now.
Okay. All right. So once I saw that workshop, I got inspired by the concept of writing down words, writing down something. I have a house in Canada that we spend 6 months at, and then a house down here that we spend 6 months at. And returning to New Brunswick created this concept of memory. And I started thinking, oh my goodness, climbing trees, all the things that I did as a child. And I had created this painting, and I don't have the original right here, but it's a little girl climbing a tree. And all of it is a handmade paper and a fabric collage. Then the little girl herself is a painting. That's the only painted part of the piece. But that inspired a whole series of memories. So I created this piece, which is at the beach, spending hours upon hours at the beach. And all of a sudden, she had a crown. Well, underneath this piece is a poem about being a child and hearing the sounds of a childhood memory, which was the train. Sleep back in a house that I can hear the train, and it's the same train sound as when I was a child. So this whole series that I created has the poem that I wrote about the train underneath it. And I guess at the beginning, I didn't really want to necessarily have you be able to read the poem. I basically wanted it to just be a poem that I told you was under there somewhere, under all the layers of paint. But what happened instead is this ghost-like, light, thin layer of paint evolved from it. And so you can see some of the letters in the piece. And I chose to keep it that way. I didn't layer more on top to lose that. I allowed the letters to stay, and they created a whole different layering of forms and shapes underneath. So I kept it. And then she developed a crown. And then I thought, oh, I like the crown, so I'm going to play with the crown. So the next piece I created was this one. Again, it has all the poem underneath, the same poem. And again, I created a ghost-like image of this little memory I had with mice and rabbits and finding bird nests. And I just rearranged it in such a way that it told my story, but created a whole new scenario in the meantime. So here again, you can see some of the lettering that forms the poem underneath. And then one other piece in that series, there's probably about 18 pieces in that series, but here's another one of a memory of seeing a moose in the cemetery with my little sister. So I have a tendency lately, probably for the last maybe 4 years, of working in series, because sometimes you get a thought and you get a concept and you can't say it all in one painting. It would be way too busy. Not that I'm not busy, I'm way busy in my art, just saying. But sometimes a piece can become too busy because you're trying to say 19 things. So if you just say one thing and then come back to another piece and say another thing and say another thing. I'm very much a storyteller in my art. I always have been. And there's a quote that I love, and it's from Jackson Pollock. And he says, "Painting is self-discovery. Every artist paints what he is." And I love that. I love that it's not just about what we are showing the world on our canvases, but it's what we're also showing the world from ourselves. So that series took me about 1.5 years to paint. I showed it in a few places. And then I decided, okay, what's my next series? So I started painting trees and branches and different things that made me feel like, I think the tree becomes at some point for me a bit of a hiding place, maybe a little bit of a metaphor of childhood safe places, that kind of concept. So I created a few trees. There'll be a few more trees coming up, but I stopped dead in that track because I thought of another series. So I have a friend of mine who lives in New Brunswick. He's a great artist. His name is Paul-Edouard Book, and he and I decided to create paintings for a show this coming summer up in New Brunswick, Canada. And he said, "Oh, just do anything." And I'm like, I'm not good at just doing anything. Don't just give me an open palette. Give me a word. Give me something, a dream. Tell me to explore dreams. Tell me something. But don't just tell me anything goes, because I'll be stuck and my wheels will be turning and I'll flat tire all the way. So what I decided to give him and myself is a word. And this series is in development right now. and I'm calling it veils. So what I basically did is I just wrote down the words of what I thought veils were, and you guys have, I'm sure, a million of them. Protective layer from outside forces, maybe. Disguising our deceptions, delusions, insults, typically. A lens to view the world through, maybe. A passage in time, like innocence, ignorance, jealousy, pride, maybe. A shroud between the living and the veiled shadow place called death, definitely. So what I did is I wrote those things down and I just pondered them, put the paper away, and now I'm creating 6 pieces. I don't want to paint too much in them. I want them to be collages. So I'm working 3 at a time. That is hard. I don't know how many of you work on separate pieces at the same time. I am the girl who starts one. Don't distract me until I'm finished with that one. Call it finished, call it good, and then I move on to the other thing. But I'm trying in some crazy way to unsettle myself a little bit, to shake things up a little bit, to change something in why, I don't know. It just is what I'm doing. So I'm working on 3 at a time. I'm going to have 6 totally. So I am going to show you the first 2 of the 3 that I think are done. So the top one is a piece from the image. I don't know, can you see it without a glare? So
Yeah, it's pretty good.
This piece here, I'll call the 3 virtues, and it's an image from my high school teaching art days. And it's a former student of mine who had done a photography cool thing and said, Mrs. Mahoney, you should totally do something with this piece. Well, here I am like 8 years later, finally doing something with that photo. So I'm going to do all photo image transfers on this series. And the feathers just appeared. I don't even know where. And the next thing you know, that piece was finished. This piece is an image of Pierre, my best friend's brother, who died 40 years ago. And I'm calling it Spirit Guide. And of course, if you know me or anything about me, I am into textures. I love visual textures. I love real textures. I love in trying to work them out so that they can all work together at the same time. And sometimes I succeed and sometimes I don't. Then the 2 that I'm working on right now, plus the 2 that are trying to work all at the same time, are these 2. And these are an image of my girlfriend's daughter, Emily. And I'm trying to just play with these, but they're not done. And I don't know if they're working. And I'll come back to those to get a little critique word from any of you who think you know how to make these work. But right now, I just want to finish with something that I was challenged with that I thought was brilliant. And it's amazing to me how that one artist workshop years ago inspired me to use words in my art. So here's what is another amazing. I'm a member of the Tampa Bay Surface Design Guild, and I go to their meetings every Monday, once a month on a Monday night. And at the last meeting, they had a eco challenge. This gal brought in a whole big butt ton of styrofoam and said, those of you who would like to take the challenge can take a piece, and you have 3 things. You can choose to make a frame, you can choose to make a sculpture, or you can choose to make a clock. And I'm thinking, clock? Yeah, I'm not making a clock. But a frame, I could do a frame. So let me show you what I did. So I took the piece of styrofoam and I cut it into slices. It was a nice big thick one. I cut it into 4 equal slices. I mitered the ends, taped it all together, and created a frame size. Then I took some texture paste and laid it over to smooth out the little gouges in the styrofoam, etc. And then I started pouring plaster Paris molds. So let me show you what I have. So these are the plaster Paris molds that I have. that I'm adding to my piece. These were also, so I'm using the plaster of Paris in these silicone molds. And when they come out, I glue them on with a nice thick texture paste from Golden. And then I'm going to gild it with just gold, Daniel Smith gold acrylic gesso. And then I'm using a deeper, richer gold to kind of create the antique-y look of the gold frame. And then this is how I'll finish it at the end with some antiquing with a nice brown color. And I might polish it by sanding the tops here and making them gold, or I might just add a little touch of brighter gold on some of the raised areas. But I did this challenge, was so excited about it. And now I have this thought of creating other frames for other pieces, but maybe more modern. That was just a definite impromptu, go to gold, love gold, play with gold. What can you create? And now I'm thinking, I could do some really modern pieces. It also led to this. I cut out some larger pieces to create almost a altar piece, if you will. And I love medieval art. I've always been influenced by a medieval or medieval period of art. So I think what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to also collage them. I have a sample here that I wanted you to see of some papers that I've collected and how I may use them, how I may not. But they're going to become very modern altars. They will have the shape of a medieval altar, but they will be very modern in subject matter. So do you see how all of a sudden you can take something that someone thought, let's use this foam core. How can I get everybody to be motivated to do that? And it's led to so many other things. Do you see what I mean? So all right, so I would love for any of you to now share. I'm going to go sit at my computer and turn my phone off.
Actually, can I ask a question really quick?
Sure.
How did you do the cutting? Do you use a hot knife or what?
I have a knife that is meant to be a knife for gold leaf, where you just kind of cut and then lift it up. But it's super sharp. And I just sliced into that and it cut it like butter. I didn't even have to heat the knife, nothing.
Wow.
It just cut it so easily. I couldn't believe. I thought I was going to end up with so much debris. And you know how foam core, when you cut it, it can become static electricity. And it didn't. It just didn't.
Wow.
So now I'm like, okay, who just got a refrigerator in? Because I could use that phone. So I'm doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and switch. Actually, I could turn off my computer and not even need that and just sit here. And I'd love for you to share your thoughts on what inspires you. Or, of course, if you have any questions regarding my series or my eco challenge or the studio space here, I'm open to whatever. But yeah, any questions?
Denise, thank you for sharing your studio and the story behind it. I love it that you've been open and listening, and your husband encouraged you to take a large space, and now you have someone to work with, and you learn from her. And it's interesting because if she's a dancer, she must be all over the place sometimes. And that might drive you crazy, but you're taking it all in good stride and you learn from that. So I think it's good that you are so adaptable and ready to embrace whatever comes your way. And I love the fact that you work in series. I've always worked in series. I think you learn so much from it. Mm-hmm. And I think that maybe at the end of this Zoom, after everybody wants to give their input, maybe we can stay if you have time, and you'll show us your last piece that you want some input.
Yes.
And we can stay and you can share that piece and we'll give you the critique
I would love that.
now, right after this Zoom is recorded.
Okay.
But thank you so much for being our president, for doing it with so much care and love. And we have grown together, and we really are thankful and grateful to you.
Thanks.
And we're looking forward to having you working whatever you want one day that you retire from our presidency.
Yes,
but
you're
thank you for being so gracious.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, it's funny that you say that about Kate, but one of the things that has worked out so amazing is we are rarely working in the studio at the same time. It just works out that she's working mornings on a day, I arrive in the afternoon, and we might overlap by an hour, maybe. It's been really great. So I at first I thought, oh, would sharing a studio be difficult? You know, and it's not at all. It's quite lovely. So I lucked out with my choice of studio mate.
Good. And I want to know something. Like, will the studio space pay by itself because you get so many people coming in and maybe they buy your cards or your work? So does it pay by itself with all this?
When I was upstairs in the little tiny closet studio, I paid my rent with my reproductions and my cards pretty much consistently every month. And by selling a painting occasionally, of course, that is the best scenario. But lately, the economy has been strange, and none of us have been selling paintings. And I think that's part of the reason why we're doing the open studio hours and trying to get more people in. I had a gal here the other day who is actually another former art student of mine. She moved from Seattle to Tampa, and she's an interior designer. And she brought 3 of her clients who are looking for artwork. And I just sent a text to all the artists and said, I'm going to be here with someone who wants a variety. And we did a private tour. And she chose some art from, she didn't buy mine, but she brought 2 of Kate's, and she brought a couple of pieces from 2 other people. So at the end of the day, the more we do that, the more that will, and these are subsidized studios. So they're about 50% of the cost that it would be out on the economy. So I would pay double what I'm paying now if I was at another place that was a privatized place. So I'm very lucky. That 3 years that I was on the waiting list paid off. So any questions, comments?
I was gonna say that the way it's set up with those tables and everything would be perfect for our workshops too. It seems
I'm glad you said that. I have, as you know, I'm also a printmaker, and I have a technique. I think I've done a workshop on it, so it would be in the archives on our members only page. And it's called Provincetown White Line Printmaking. And it's such a great introduction to people who want to become printmakers, or at least just experiment with the concept of creating a printing plate and having the ability to reuse that plate for more than one. Still, originals, because in the printmaking world, each proof that you pull from your printing plate is considered a original on paper. So I offer that workshop, and here at the Warehouse Art District, there's a classroom upstairs, and I thought, you know what, I can only fit 6 people up there. If I had a class here in my own studio, I could probably fit 12. So I did one last month, and I had, I think, 8 students, and it was perfect. I'm like, yeah, I can set up in advance. I don't have to worry about the drawing lab that happens and clean up and take down and all that. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing, Roberta. I am teaching classes in my studio, and it's been fantastic. I love it.
Great space. It's really a great space. The other thing I was going to mention is that there's a few of us that actually do the words. You know, I know there's a few of us, even 2 of us, I think, here, that are, they work with words and then we paint on top. But it's amazing to see everybody's interpretation. There's never two the same. It's like, to me, it's like almost like snowflakes. Some people approach it
Exactly.
differently,
Exactly. And I love that. I love that I can be inspired by something somebody shared, and it'll throw me off into a whole nother direction. And when I tell them they inspired me by what they did or showed me or said, they go, wait, where? And I'll mean like, well, don't you see it right here and here? And they'll go, oh yeah, but that's a stretch, Denise. You were inspired by me and created that? Cool. Right? But isn't that how we as artists work? We just
That's the
find
synergy you were talking.
inspiration.
Yeah, that's the synergy you're talking about. I love
Mhm.
that. It's why we do what we do here, and share, because even if we interpret totally different, it's still energy that we build from each other.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, for
believe
sure.
me. So
Annette, we'd like to hear your comments, please.
sure to unmute
Annette?
yourself.
Hi.
Unmute.
Hi, Denise.
Oh, Lisa, go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. Sure. Hi. Thank you for sharing your workspace with us. That was really exciting. I also was looking, I have been living in Florida for over 25 years, and I was looking to be like in two different places. And I had started looking at these spaces up in other areas, more in the New York area. And it was funny because I thought, oh, I'll never be able to do this. And you just gave me the inspiration to keep going for it, even if
Keep
it
on
won't
going.
ever
Keep on
happen. It
going.
may not ever happen. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's the support we give each other. That, it may sound like a crazy idea, but no, it's not.
It's
It
not.
works.
It's not. And I love it. Like there's times where I'm here for 8 months and I'm up in Canada for less. I'm flexible like that. But the fact is, when I'm not here, I have a studio mate who has the doors open.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference to the Warehouse Art District in that they'd like to see the doors open during art walks. They don't want to see a bunch of closed doors. We're trying to, be a place where people go to buy gifts, to be inspired, to see art and buy art.
Mhm. And I also love that you shared about, being inspired by other artists, because I need that camaraderie sometimes. Sometimes we're designing or creating in a vacuum, and just like a word can kind of spark a new idea or concept. Like I was struggling with something, and I couldn't connect it. I also work in series. I don't work one-on-one. I have to work like a lot at once, and I do like a burst of energy, and then I'm drained, and then I do a burst of energy, then I'm drained. So I'm now about to start on this burst of energy of like I'm getting everything. I have to get everything in order, and I research and I study old artists and new artists, and I'm like a nut trying to figure out where I'm going to go with this. And then all of a sudden I'll shut down. But I love the energy that I used to get from people that were also creative. And I feel like when I'm in that mode in the summer, there's not enough creative people here because they do leave the area. And so what I started doing was inviting people who are not artists to come into my studio and learn art. And I'm learning from them. And I
Oh, I
thought,
love that.
because they're looking at it from a total different point of view,
Mhm.
and they're doing things that I may not have done as an artist, but it's intriguing. So I might take it like something that they did or how they mixed something, and I said, "Oh, that's really interesting. I'm going to keep that in mind for my next project."
Oh, I
And
love that.
it's not like I'm copying it, but I'm inspired by what they do and the way that they're thinking, because they don't have any
Mhm.
preconceived notions about that technique or how it was done. And so I'm looking at masters, and now I'm looking at people who are not masters. And I'm like,
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I used to do that even with my students. They'd go, "Well, what about this?" And I'd go, "Then show me how you're going to develop it. And if you want, I'll show you how I would develop it, but I'll only show you after you finish yours." And we would do these little parallel projects, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you took it there?" And I'm like, "And you took it there?" Love that.
yeah.
Because I think people forget, and artists do too, that we're not in a competition. We are the creative souls that we are. We work from our own subconscious. It just evolves from there. And it's not necessarily who we are, but it definitely reflects on who we are. And that can't be copied.
Mhm.
We could all say, let's work on one concept, and everybody's going to come up with something different. And that is power to me. That's powerful.
Well, thank you again for sharing that.
Yeah.
Gina, why don't you express your comments? I saw you put something on the chat, so go ahead and tell us.
Can't hear you.
We
Actually,
unmute yourself, please. Unmute yourself.
yes, I actually just texted that I have to run. I'm so sorry. But I just recently joined you all and the NAWA Florida group. So thank you so much. This is wonderful. And this is my first workshop attending, and I loved it. Thank you so much, Denise, and I really look forward to getting to know you all and learning from each other. I think that this was, to your point, one of the things that I do is my website and everything is called Visual Poetry by Gina, and so I don't incorporate the words on the pieces, but I have a notebook of just poetry and snippets of prose that really have inspired me through the years. And then I go back to, what you were talking about, Lisa, you work and work and then are spent and then have to go back for, researching, okay, what am I going to do next? And so I have this little book of, kind of go back to the drawing board, what's going to work, where am I going to go for my next series? So it's fun. Like you all have been saying kind of the same thing. We all inspire each other through little words or through little things, and we take it in our own direction, which is so exciting. And it makes it so much fun because we're all so different. And and I feel like the results are a reflection of ourselves and, what kind of things we bring to the world and what kind of things we, our approaches, our viewpoints, bring beauty, I think, in different ways.
I love that you're inspired by poetry. Wonderful.
Oh, I get all dorky about it. I like back to the 1100s, like Hildegard von Bingen, and all of the all the way up to modern. I think this last piece I just submitted for a show wasn't poetry. It was a woman who produces or writes about nature, and so I'm also a beekeeper. So I had a series on pollinators and, just a quote from her about how bees are the voice of the garden. The hum of bees is the voice of the garden. And so that kind of just took me off into a whole nother, like I said, we were all saying one word, it'll take you off into some kind of giant rabbit hole, which is fun. It kind of keeps things spicy. Yeah.
I love that. Thanks, Gina.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And again, I'm sorry I couldn't stay for the feedback on your piece. They're all extremely amazing, and it actually just made me. I get excited when you see a good piece because then I'm like shoving my face into the camera, wanting to get as close as I can and see into the piece. So I'll have to come by.
That's funny.
For those of you who haven't met yet, I'm in Tampa, so I'm pretty close to where Denise is. So I'm going to have to come and see it in person. I want to get all close up into those pieces.
Yes, do. Yeah, come next Art Walk if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was so nice to meet you all. And thank you so much for these beautiful and wonderful opportunities that you serve to us. It's really great to be part of this organization.
Well, thanks. We love having you, Gina. Thanks.
Gina. And thank you for joining us. A lot of people, they like to watch it afterwards as a recording, but there's something about the feedback that makes it much more energized. So I appreciate you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh, it's much more fun because then, like you said, you can interact and, instead of just saying, like nodding my head by myself when Lisa said something, I can actually say, oh, yeah, I totally vibe with that. So, I get that. And actually, it made me feel good because I was like, is this how people work? Because you get into that whole, oh my gosh, I have to get this out. And then just like throw up on the canvas. And then I'm spent and I'm like, oh, wow, I feel like I don't know what to do next. And then I go through that whole research and, trying to figure out what inspires you. So I can totally vibe with what you're saying, Lisa. So that was actually nice for me to hear, just reinforcing that. Yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry, I have to run. But
Thank you,
again,
Gina.
it was so nice to meet you all. Take care.
Annette, would you like to share some words? Unmute yourself, please. Unmute yourself. There's a little button on the bottom, probably.
Okay, got it. I wish I could share some words of wisdom. I admire each one of you so much, really. My work is totally different. I usually don't like to be given a subject because my work is very spontaneous. And when I'm kind of in the middle or toward the end of it, then I see a theme coming up. But it's hard for me to paint to a theme. I don't like it. My corporate job was in the computer field and designing systems and programming, and it had to be so very precise that I am enjoying the freedom of working on abstract work so much. I wish I had more wisdom to impart, except that I just do it, and it makes me feel better. My inspiration is music. It's loud. It's all over the house, and it's what gets me moving and excited, and I just keep going at it. And the fact that we exhibit, that we have opportunities to exhibit, is what forces me to finish something. Clean up the edges, wire it, and all that. And I just love it. And I love listening to all of you because there's something that I get from each one of your inspirations and techniques. And thank you. Thank you, Denise. And thank you, every one of you, for helping me to be inspired and to continue.
Let me tell you, Annette's spontaneity is a gift. So enjoy it.
I love
You're
that.
doing something so different from your career that now you're free. You're like a bird, free to roam anywhere you want. So that's
it. Yeah. For me, it's colors and shapes and marks. And eventually you see a theme, and different people can see something different than I do. And I'm really okay with that.
And it's still coming from your subconscious at the end of the day.
Totally. Yes. Yes.
And do you have a favorite music that you like to listen to when you?
All kinds. I was trained in classical music as a child, so I listen to that, and I mix it with jazz and pop and rock. I have it on a loop. So
cool.
Yeah, so it works out for me. Without music, I feel sad, and I don't want to do much, but music gets me going.
I agree. 100%. Put the headphones in, put the music on loud.
I'm the opposite. I listen to podcasts, so I have a tendency.
Really?
Well, I have to concentrate on that.
Storytelling. I like the storytelling.
When I take walks.
I would just get into the story and start painting the story. I don't know.
And it happens. And it happens, which is why sometimes my art gets really negative. So there's different ways. You know?
That's funny. Fun. Wow. Interesting. Cool. Well, if there's any other comments, I would appreciate them. But I want to give you a minute to look at this piece that is getting on my nerves.
Oh, do you want me to record this, or do you want me to turn off the recording for a critique?
I think turn off the recording.
Okay. Well, then I'll say thank you. So it's officially ending the recording. Okay. And I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Denise. Yeah. Thank you to all who attended today.
Yeah.